After working 3 jobs to pay her husband's debts, she overheard him brag about his personal slave. I stood frozen in the marble hallway of our Atlanta penthouse at 2 a.m., my feet bleeding through worn sneakers, listening to my husband laugh about how I was his personal slave, working 3 jobs to pay debts that didn't exist. 3 years of 85-hour weeks, skipped meals, destroyed friendships, all while he stacked my money in the Cayman Islands and planned to disappear with another woman. Welcome to Luck Stories. Quick question before we start. Have you ever been judged by your appearance, only to prove everyone wrong? Share your story in the comments and watch till the end, because today's tale will leave you speechless. Don't skip a second. But here's what Marcus didn't know. The person I called at 2:07 a.m. wasn't just anyone. It was his brother, the one he told me was dead. What would you do if you discovered the person you destroyed yourself for saw your struggle, your race, your history as nothing more than tools for exploitation? Have you ever worked yourself to exhaustion for someone you loved? Have you ever trusted someone so completely that you ignored every red flag? Has anyone ever used your kindness as a weapon against you? This isn't just about a cheating husband or stolen money. This is about a man who weaponized my blackness, my trauma, and my work ethic, who believed my people are used to struggling and would never question him. What happened in the next 48 hours didn't just expose Marcus. It revealed a web of lies involving Charleston's oldest families, a faked death, and a secret that would make national headlines. Hit that subscribe button right now, because this story has more twists than a mountain road, and I guarantee the ending will leave you speechless. But before I tell you about the revenge that destroyed him, let me take you back to where this nightmare began 5 years ago in Nashville, when I thought I'd found my fairy tale. 5 years ago in Nashville, a white man from old Charleston money told me he'd sacrifice everything for love, and like a fool, I believed him. The ballroom glittered with crystal chandeliers and champagne flutes, a world so far from South Memphis it might as well have been another planet. I balanced a tray of drinks in one hand while dodging women in gowns that cost more than my yearly rent. December 2019, and I was working the annual Vanderbilt Medical Center charity gala, smiling through exhaustion after a double shift at the hospital. When his hand brushed mine as he took a glass, electricity shot up my arm. Those blue eyes held mine a beat too long, and I felt heat crawl up my neck despite the air conditioning that kept the room frigid enough to preserve their privilege. "You're too beautiful to be serving drinks," he said. And I rolled my eyes because I'd heard every line in the book. "And you're too wealthy to be talking to the help," I shot back, already turning away. He followed me. All night. Between serving champagne to Nashville's elite, Marcus Bennett told me about his family old Charleston money, generations of banking and real estate, the kind of wealth that whispered instead of shouted. He said he'd walked away from all of it because they couldn't accept that he wanted to live his own life, make his own choices. "They have rules about everything," he said over our third conversation near the kitchen doors. "Who we marry, where we live, what we do. I'm done being their puppet." 3 weeks later, we were inseparable. He'd show up at Vanderbilt with coffee during my breaks. We'd walk through Centennial Park, and he'd talk about building a life based on love instead of legacy. When he held my hand in public, white women stared. I'd lived in Tennessee long enough to recognize the looks, but Marcus never flinched. "Let them stare," he'd say, pulling me closer. "You're the bravest, strongest woman I've ever met. You work 2 jobs. You're getting your nursing degree. You're not afraid of anything. That's who I want beside me." My mama had passed 2 years before, and her absence was a constant ache. She'd taught me that hard work and dignity went hand in hand, that love meant sacrifice, that you stood by your people through anything. Marcus seemed to understand that about me. He said, "It's what made me special." By June 2020, we were married in a small Savannah ceremony with only 2 witnesses, a couple he knew from business school. My cousins in Memphis couldn't make it because of the pandemic, and his family, he said, had refused to attend. I wore a simple white dress from Macy's, and he cried when I walked toward him on the courthouse steps. "You're giving up everything to be with me," I whispered during our first dance at the tiny reception dinner. "No," he said, kissing my forehead. "I'm gaining everything that matters." On our wedding night in that small Savannah hotel, as Marcus held me and whispered promises about our future. His phone buzzed with a text. I saw the name before he could hide it. Dad, Charleston. The family that supposedly disowned him, but when I asked about it, he kissed me silent and said, "Some ghosts take time to let go." I didn't know then that I was the ghost he'd eventually try to bury. The first year of marriage, I mistook his controlling behavior for protection until the day he threw away my phone because a male nurse texted me about a shift change. Our Buckhead apartment was beautiful, but felt like a cage with crown molding. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the Atlanta skyline, but I was always too exhausted to enjoy the view, collapsing into bed still wearing my scrubs. We'd moved to Atlanta in August 2020 for better opportunities. I landed a nursing assistant position at Grady Memorial Hospital, working the chaos of the emergency department. Marcus said he was doing investment consulting from home, conference calls with clients, analyzing portfolios. He'd be on his laptop when I left at 5 a.m. and still there when I returned at 7 p.m. "How was your day?" I'd ask, and he'd give vague answers about market trends and difficult clients. Money got tight fast. Atlanta was expensive, and somehow we were always short on rent despite both of us working. When I suggested we look at the budget together, Marcus got defensive. "I handle the finances," he said. "You focus on your career. That's how partnerships work. We each have our role." My role, apparently, was working 60-hour weeks while he controlled every dollar. He set up a joint account where my paychecks were deposited, but I didn't have access to view it online. "It's easier if I manage the bills," he explained. "You're too busy saving lives to worry about utilities." The phone incident happened in March 2021. David, a male nurse I worked with, texted about switching shifts. Marcus read it over my shoulder and exploded. "Who the hell is David? Why is he texting you at night?" "He's asking about Tuesday's schedule." Marcus grabbed my phone and deleted the message. Then he went through my entire contact list, questioning every male name. When I tried to explain that these were colleagues, people I worked with every day, he accused me of being naive about men's intentions. "They don't want to be your friend, Keisha," he said. "They want something else. You're too trusting." He pulled me into the bedroom that afternoon, his hands possessive rather than passionate, marking territory instead of making love. "You're mine, Keisha," he growled against my neck. "No one else gets to have you. Not your friends, not your family, not those men at work." At the time, I thought it was desire. Now I know it was ownership. I stopped going to after-work drinks with my coworkers. I made excuses when my cousin Tanisha called from Memphis wanting to visit. I turned down a study group for my RN licensing exam because 2 of the members were men. Slowly, carefully, Marcus trimmed away every connection I had until he was my entire world. "It's us against everyone," he'd say, holding me at night. "We only need each other." When did concern cross the line into control in your relationships? Have you ever confused jealousy with love? Tell me in the comments how you recognized the difference. The night he came home with tears streaming down his face, telling me about $340,000 in gambling debts and loan sharks threatening his life, I held him and promised we'd fix it together. I remember thinking this was my chance to prove my love was real, that I could save him the way he'd saved me from a life of poverty. What I didn't know was that those tears were rehearsed, and the debt was about as real as his family's disapproval. I added a second job cleaning houses in Buckhead, then a third slinging pancakes at IHOP until 2 a.m., and every single week, Marcus took my money and kissed my forehead like I was his hero. The gambling debt story came in May 2021, complete with fake threatening emails and panicked phone calls that he'd taken another room. He showed me loan documents that looked official, payment schedules that demanded $4,000 monthly. My hospital salary barely covered half of that. "I'll get another job," I told him. "We'll beat this together." Marcus cried and held me. "I don't deserve you," he whispered. "But I promise, once we're clear of this, I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you." By June, I was cleaning houses for wealthy Buckhead families 3 evenings a week. Mrs. Patterson paid $150 to clean her 5-bedroom house every Tuesday and Thursday. The Johnsons wanted their place spotless every Wednesday for $120. I'd leave Grady at 2 p.m., scrub bathrooms and mop floors until 8 p.m., then drag myself home smelling like pine sol and bleach. The Buckhead mansions I cleaned smelled like money, fresh flowers delivered weekly, hardwood floors that gleamed under my hands and knees, bathrooms bigger than my childhood bedroom. I scrubbed their toilets and thought about how Marcus said we were almost there, how my sacrifice would be worth it. In August, I added the IHOP overnight shift, 9 p.m. to 2 a.m., Friday through Sunday. By then, my schedule was crushing. Hospital from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m., cleaning from 3 p.m. to 8 p.m., IHOP from 9 p.m. to 2 a.m. on weekends. I slept in 3-hour chunks. I stopped seeing colors properly from exhaustion. My feet bled through my sneakers. Marcus would massage them on Sunday afternoons, my one half-day off. "You're amazing," he'd say. "So strong. We're almost there, baby. Just a little longer." Every 2 weeks, I'd hand him my paychecks, all 3 of them. He'd deposit them into our joint account and show me the debt payment confirmation on his laptop. "The numbers were going down," he'd say. "We were making progress." I lost 23 pounds in 4 months. My coworker, Rita, the one who'd been a nurse longer than I'd been alive, cornered me in the break room after I nearly passed out during a patient transfer. "Baby, ain't no man worth killing yourself for," she said, checking my blood pressure. "And any man who'd let you do this ain't worth the trouble." I laughed it off. "He's not making me do anything. This is my choice." "Is it?" Rita raised an eyebrow. "Because, from where I'm standing, you look like someone running from something instead of running towards something." By the time I dragged myself home most nights, I was too exhausted for intimacy. But on Sundays, my only half-day off, he'd pull me into the shower, washing my aching body with a tenderness that made me cry. "You're so strong," he'd whisper, his hands massaging my sore muscles. "So beautiful. I don't deserve you." His touch was the only softness in my life, and I craved it like oxygen. Have you ever sacrificed so much for someone that you lost yourself? When did you realize you were giving more than you were receiving? Share your story below. You're not alone. 4 months into my 3-job schedule, I collapsed at the hospital. My supervisor, a no-nonsense black woman named Rita who reminded me of my mama, caught me before I hit the floor. As she checked my blood pressure, she said something that should have woken me up. "Baby, ain't no man worth killing yourself for. And any man who'd let you do this ain't worth the trouble." I laughed it off. But Rita's words planted a seed that would eventually grow into the courage I needed to face the truth. The first time I saw Marcus's cruelty toward someone who looked like me, I should have known he felt the same way about his wife. We stood outside the Sundial restaurant downtown, the revolving rooftop view spinning the city into a blur of lights. But I couldn't focus on the beauty, only on the young man's humiliated face as Marcus screamed at him over a tiny scratch on the car bumper that was already there. October 2021. And Marcus had insisted on taking me to dinner for our anniversary. I'd picked up an extra IHOP shift to help with the debt payments, but he'd said we needed this one night to remember why we were fighting so hard. The valet, maybe 19 years old with neat cornrows and a nervous smile, brought our car around. Marcus walked around the vehicle like he was inspecting for bombs, then pointed at a scratch on the rear bumper. "You did this," Marcus said, his voice cold. "Sir, that was already there. I noted it when you pulled up." "Don't lie to me. Do you know how much this car costs? More than you'll make in 5 years at this job." I stood there, frozen, watching this kid's face shift from confusion to humiliation to anger he couldn't express. Other valets and diners were staring. Marcus's voice got louder, harsher, using words that danced around slurs without quite saying them. "You people, and typical, and should be grateful to even have this job." "Marcus," I finally said, touching his arm. "Let's just go." He shook me off and kept going for another 2 minutes, threatening to have the kid fired, to call the restaurant owner who was apparently a friend. The young man just stood there taking it, jaw clenched, eyes on the ground. When we finally got in the car, my hands were shaking. "That was too much," I said quietly. "He damaged our property. He needs to take responsibility. That scratch was there when we arrived. I saw it. Marcus glanced at me, and for just a second, I saw something cold in his eyes. Then he smiled and reached for my hand. You're too kind, baby. That's why you're so special. You always see the best in people, even when they don't deserve it. That night, he tried to make up for it with passionate intensity, pushing me against the bedroom wall with a hunger that felt more like anger than desire. You know you're different, right? He panted against my throat. You're not like them, you're special. His words should have been a compliment, but they tasted like poison on my skin. I couldn't sleep. I kept seeing that young valet's face, the way he'd had to stand there and take abuse from a man who looked at him and saw something less than human. And Marcus thought I was different, special, not like them. Has anyone ever told you that you were different from your own people, like it was supposed to be a compliment? How did that make you feel? Drop a comment. Let's talk about what that really means. 3 days later, I was cleaning Mrs. Patterson's house when her credit card bill sat open on the kitchen counter. My eyes caught the charges before I could stop myself. Marcus Bennett, $4,500 at a Miami Beach restaurant. Marcus Bennett, $2,800 at Saks Fifth Avenue. Marcus Bennett, $1,200 at a steakhouse in Buckhead. The dates were from the past month, while I was working 3 jobs and bleeding through my shoes. Later that week, while Marcus was in the shower, his phone buzzed on the nightstand. A text from V with a Miami area code. Can't wait to see you next month, baby. The condo is perfect. You were right. This was worth the wait. My hands shook as I read it. Then another came through. How much longer do you have to keep up the act with her? I heard the water shut off and put the phone down exactly where I'd found it. For the first time in 3 years, I started planning instead of reacting. I learned the truth about Marcus the same way he'd been lying to me in secret, late at night, when he thought I was too exhausted to notice. The laptop screen glowed blue in our dark bedroom, illuminating secrets while Marcus snored in our bed 10 feet away. Each click of the mouse felt loud as a gunshot. My heart hammered so hard I was sure he'd hear it. But exhaustion had him sleeping deep, the kind of rest only the unburdened can afford. It was 1 a.m. on a Tuesday in November 2021. I'd just gotten home from my IHOP shift, told Marcus I needed to check my hospital schedule online, and waited until his breathing went steady and slow. His laptop password was my birthday. That should have made me feel loved. Instead, it made me feel stupid. The first thing I found was the bank account. Not our joint account, a different one. Cayman Islands International Bank. The balance made me blink 3 times to make sure I was reading it right. $183,847.29. I clicked through the transaction history. Deposits every 2 weeks, perfectly matching the amounts I'd been giving him for debt payments. 3 years of my money, sitting in an offshore account I didn't even know existed. My chest got tight. I kept clicking. The email folder labeled V held 2 years of correspondence with Vanessa Rodriguez, a Miami real estate agent. They'd been planning this for months. He'd bought a condo in South Beach for $340,000, the exact amount of his fake gambling debt. The closing was scheduled for December 15th. Can't wait to start our real life together, Vanessa had written in August. You've been so patient with this situation. I know it's been hard pretending with her. Marcus's response made my stomach drop. It's fine. She's exactly the type who'll accept this and move on. Hard-working, loyal to a fault, conditioned by her background to expect struggle and loss. By the time she realizes what happened, we'll be untouchable. Her pride won't even let her press charges because she'll be too embarrassed to admit she was fooled. I read that 3 times. Conditioned by her background. Too embarrassed. Fooled. The bitter irony wasn't lost on me. The same bed where he'd made love to me that morning, whispering how much he needed me, how I was his everything, was now the scene of my awakening. I could still feel where his hands had gripped my hips, hear him groaning my name. All of it, every touch, every kiss, every passionate moment had been performance. My body felt like a crime scene. I found the fake loan documents next. He'd created them himself, using templates and stock company logos. The threatening emails came from addresses he'd set up. The payment confirmations were photoshopped bank statements. Then I found the folder labeled Family Business. Emails between Marcus and someone named William Bennett sent to a Charleston address. Recent emails. Messages about trust funds and inheritance, loopholes and waiting periods. William was alive. Marcus had lied about his brother being dead. The email that changed everything was dated 3 weeks ago. The plan is almost complete. Once I clear out the account next week, I'll stage the final payment scene and disappear. She'll never suspect these people are conditioned to struggle and accept loss. By the time she figures it out, I'll be untouchable, and you'll have your settlement money from Dad's estate, like we agreed. William's response came the next day. Remember, little brother, this was your idea. I wanted no part of exploiting your wife, but since you insist on using her to access our inheritance loophole, at least make it quick. Some of us still have a conscience. I read it 5 times. Inheritance loophole. Using her. These people. What would you do if you discovered everything you believed was a lie? Would you confront immediately or gather evidence first? Tell me in the comments. I need to know I wasn't crazy for what I did next. The dead brother. The inheritance. The loophole. Suddenly everything made sense and I knew exactly who to call. At 2:07 a.m. on a Tuesday morning, I called a dead man, and he answered on the first ring like he'd been waiting for me. I stood on our balcony overlooking Buckhead, the Atlanta night thick with humidity and possibility. Somewhere below, the city hummed with people who had no idea that their world and mine were about to collide in a way that would make headlines. My phone felt heavy as a weapon. My hands shook as I dialed the Charleston number from Marcus's emails. 1 ring, 2 rings, then a voice, deeper and rougher than Marcus's smooth lies. This is William Bennett. Your brother told me you were dead, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Silence. Then, Mrs. Bennett, you found out. Not a question. A statement of fact, delivered with something that sounded like relief. Tell me everything, I said. And don't lie to me. I've had enough lies to last a lifetime. William's voice was nothing like Marcus's, deeper, rougher, real. Mrs. Bennett, he said, and something about the respect in his tone made my throat tight. I'm so sorry. You deserve to know everything. As he talked, explaining the family's true dynamics, I felt something shift in my chest. This man, Marcus's brother, was treating me with more dignity over the phone than my husband had in 3 years of sharing a bed. The story came out in pieces over the next hour. The Bennett Family Trust, established generations ago, had a provision. Any Bennett man who married a woman from a disadvantaged background could access an additional $7 million immediately instead of waiting until age 40. It was supposed to encourage social responsibility. Instead, the Bennett men had turned it into a game. Marcus did this before, William said quietly. Her name was Angela. He married her, took the trust money, divorced her within a year. She got a settlement and signed papers agreeing never to talk about it. And you? I asked. Where were you while your brother was destroying women's lives? I faked my death in the family records, he admitted. I couldn't stop what they were doing, so I removed myself from the game entirely. I've been living in Charleston under a different last name, working construction, trying to build something that wasn't soaked in other people's pain. But you knew about me. I found out 6 months ago. I tried to warn you through anonymous emails, but Marcus monitors everything you do. Then I realized you deserved more than warnings. You deserved the truth and the tools to fight back. The woman in Miami, Vanessa, was Marcus's girlfriend from college. She'd been in on the scheme from the beginning, waiting while he played husband, ready to start their real life once he'd drained my accounts and accessed his trust fund. The timing was perfect, William continued. He married you in June 2020. The trust requires 3 years of marriage before the money transfers. December 15th, that's his 3-year mark. He was planning to take everything and disappear that day. 3 weeks away. I'd been 3 weeks away from losing everything while he vanished to his beach condo with another woman. Have you ever had to pretend everything was fine when your world was falling apart? Have you ever been intimate with someone while knowing they betrayed you? Share below if you've ever worn a mask to survive. When Marcus woke around 3 a.m. and found me still on the balcony, he pulled me inside with concern that would have fooled me yesterday. "Baby, you need rest," he murmured, his hand sliding under my shirt. "Let me take care of you." For the first time, I let him touch me while knowing the truth. His kisses tasted like lies, his hands felt like theft. But I responded like I always did. Soft sighs, eager touches, because I needed him to suspect nothing. As he moved inside me, whispering false promises, I stared at the ceiling and planned his destruction. The performance was mutual now. I'd just become a better actor. When he finished and rolled away satisfied, I felt nothing but cold, calculated fury. The next morning, William sent me a text with an attachment. "Here's everything you'll need: bank records, emails, the trust fund documents, and something else. Proof that Marcus did this to his first wife too. She's alive and willing to testify. Her name is Angela Rodriguez, and she's a lawyer in Charleston now. Call her." Below was a phone number and one more line. "Also, I'm flying to Atlanta tomorrow. We should meet. There are things about the Bennett family you need to understand before you go to war with them, and things about Marcus that are even worse than what you've discovered." I stared at that message, until Marcus called from the Semp bedroom, asking me to make breakfast. I smiled and said, "Of course, baby," but inside, I was already burning his world to the ground. When William Bennett walked into the coffee shop in Midtown Atlanta, I understood for the first time what Marcus could have been if cruelty hadn't rotted him from the inside. The coffee shop, tucked into a Midtown side street, smelled like espresso and rain. William sat in the corner booth, and when he stood to greet me, I noticed everything Marcus wasn't: genuine eyes, weathered hands that had done real work, a posture that didn't scream entitlement but rather carried the weight of complicated family legacy. He was taller than Marcus, broader through the shoulders, with the same blue eyes, but completely different energy. Where Marcus's gaze calculated and measured, William's eyes held steady respect. When he shook my hand, his grip was firm but gentle, and he held on a second longer than necessary. "You're stronger than you know," he said quietly. "My brother chose you because he thought your background made you vulnerable. He never considered it might make you a fighter." The way he looked at me like I was formidable instead of pitiful sent warmth through my chest that had nothing to do with the hot coffee between us. "Angela's meeting us in 20 minutes, William said as we sat down. "She wanted to tell you her story herself. But first, you need to understand how the Bennett family operates." He explained that the family had been wealthy for 5 generations, built on banking and real estate throughout the South. The trust fund was massive, over $40 million divided among various family members. But the marriage provision had become a loophole the men exploited. "It started with my father," William said, his jaw tight. "He did it first, married a woman from poverty, accessed his money early, then divorced her quietly. When Marcus and I were old enough, he explained it like it was a family tradition, a rite of passage. And you refused. I told him I'd rather have nothing than build my life on someone else's suffering." He looked down at his coffee. "So they cut me off, removed me from all official family documents. I was fine with that. I didn't want their blood money anyway. But Marcus, he embraced it, perfected it." Angela Rodriguez arrived exactly on time, a woman in her late 30s with sharp eyes and sharper suits. She slid into the booth beside me and got straight to business. "Marcus married me 7 years ago," she said. "Same story as yours, claimed his family disowned him for wanting to be with a Puerto Rican woman from the Bronx. I worked 3 jobs supporting us, while he supposedly consulted for investment firms. After 3 years, he divorced me, gave me $50,000, and made me sign papers promising I'd never discuss the marriage or the Bennett family." "Why did you take the money?" I asked, not judging, just understanding. "Because I was tired," Angela said simply. "Tired of fighting, tired of being poor, tired of trusting the wrong people. 50,000 felt like a fortune. I used it to finish law school." She leaned forward. "But here's what I learned since then. I wasn't the first, and you're not the last. There's a pattern going back decades. Have you ever met someone who made you realize how badly you'd been treated by everyone else? Someone who showed you what respect actually looks like? Comment below about that moment when you understood your worth. William slid a folder across the table. Angela's testimony, Marcus's bank records, emails from the family attorney about the trust fund scheme, everything you need to bury him legally. But Keisha. His voice dropped, eyes intense. There's something else. Something I didn't tell you on the phone because I needed to see if you were strong enough to hear it. My blood went cold. Marcus isn't just a con artist. 6 years ago, before you, before Angela even, there was another woman. Her name was Nicole. She was black, like you, from poverty, like you. He paused, and I saw pain flash across his face. She didn't survive the marriage. The official report said suicide, but I've never believed it. The coffee shop seemed to tilt. You think, Marcus? I think my brother is capable of anything, William said. And I think you need protection until we can expose him safely. He pulled out a key. My apartment, 2 buildings over from yours. I'm staying in Atlanta until this is done, until you're safe. For 2 weeks, I played the exhausted wife, while secretly building a case with Marcus's brother, and somewhere between evidence gathering and late-night strategy sessions, the line between alliance and attraction started to blur. William's apartment was nothing like Marcus's books everywhere. Worn furniture that had stories, photos of real places he'd been rather than designer art bought for status. It felt like a home instead of a showroom, and I found myself wanting to stay longer each night we worked on the case. We met every night after my IHOP shift. I'd text Marcus that I was picking up supplies or getting gas, then slip into William's building through the parking garage. For 2 hours, sometimes 3, we'd go through documents, build timelines, contact lawyers. Angela connected us with Nicole's family. Her mother, Mrs. Patterson. Yes, the same Mrs. Patterson whose house I'd been cleaning recognized my name immediately. You clean my home, she said when we met. I watched you work yourself to exhaustion, and I never knew you were going through what my Nicole went through. Nicole had died 3 years into her marriage to Marcus. The police report said she jumped from their balcony in Charleston, but Mrs. Patterson showed us text messages from the weeks before Nicole, saying she discovered something about Marcus, that she was scared, that she was planning to leave, but needed to gather evidence first. She was going to expose him, Mrs. Patterson said, tears streaming down her face. And then suddenly, she was gone, and the Bennett family lawyers made everything disappear. They gave us money for the funeral and made us sign papers. I've regretted it every day since. The FBI had agreed to look into Nicole's case again based on the new evidence we provided. Agent Morrison, a black woman who didn't hide her anger at what the Bennetts had done, promised a full investigation. One night, exhausted after my IHOP shift, I fell asleep on William's couch, reviewing bank statements. I woke to him, draping a blanket over me, his hand brushing my cheek so gently, I almost cried. You should go home, he whispered, but neither of us moved. His thumb traced my jawline, and for a moment, I thought he might kiss me. Instead, he pulled back. Not like this. Not while you're still legally his. You deserve better than to be anyone's secret, even mine. The restraint in his voice, the respect in his touch, was more seductive than anything Marcus had ever done. But at home, Marcus was getting suspicious. He questioned my late nights, checked my phone constantly, followed me to work twice. I had to be perfect, the exhausted, loyal wife who never questioned anything. The night Marcus noticed I'd lost weight, he became the attentive husband again, drawing me a bath, washing my hair, kissing my shoulders with practiced tenderness. I miss you, he murmured against my wet skin. You're always working. Stay home, tomorrow. I need my wife. He lifted me from the bath and carried me to bed, making love to me with the intensity of someone who sensed his time was running out. Every touch was a manipulation. Every kiss was a theft. But I matched him, responding with false passion, because I needed him confident and unsuspecting. When he fell asleep satisfied, I slipped out to the balcony and texted William. He's getting suspicious. We need to move faster. His response came immediately. Tomorrow. I've contacted the FBI about the trust fund fraud and potential connection to Nicole's death. Meet me at 6 a.m. And Keisha, after this is over, when you're free and safe, I'd like to take you to dinner. A real one. Where I treat you the way you should have been treated all along. I read that message 5 times before Marcus called from the bedroom, wanting me back in bed. I went, because the performance had to be perfect for just a little longer. What's harder, pretending you don't know someone betrayed you, or pretending you don't have feelings for someone new? Have you ever had to keep playing a role when you desperately wanted to run? Tell me in the comments how you survived. At 5:30 a.m., as I was getting ready to meet William, Marcus grabbed my wrist in the kitchen. "Where are you going so early?" His eyes were different, cold, calculating, dangerous. "The hospital called." I lied smoothly. "Emergency shift." He didn't let go. "You're lying. You've been different lately. Distant." My heart hammered. "I'm exhausted, Marcus. You know that." He pulled me closer, his grip painful. "I think you've been talking to someone. And if I find out you have," his phone rang. The moment he loosened his grip to check it, I saw the caller ID. "Vanessa Urgent." His face went white. "I have to take this," he said, releasing me. As he walked away, I heard him hiss into the phone. "What do you mean William is in Atlanta? He's supposed to be dead." The morning everything exploded, I walked into our penthouse with the FBI, Angela Rodriguez, William Bennett, and 3 years' worth of buried rage. Federal agents flooded our penthouse at 6:47 a.m., their badges gleaming under the crystal chandelier Marcus insisted we needed. The marble floors that I'd mopped on my hands and knees echoed with official voices reciting rights and charges. Everything beautiful about this place suddenly looked obscene, bought with my blood and his lies. Marcus stood in the living room in his silk pajamas, the ones I'd bought him with money from my hospital checks. His face went through shock, confusion, then landed on fury when he saw me standing beside William and Agent Morrison. "What is this?" Marcus demanded, his voice that smooth tone he used when he needed to sound reasonable. "Mr. Bennett, you're under arrest for wire fraud, trust fund manipulation, and we're reopening the investigation into the death of Nicole Patterson," Agent Morrison said, pulling out handcuffs. Marcus saw me standing beside William and something in his face cracked. "You?" he spat at his brother. "You couldn't let me have this one thing?" Then he turned to me, and I saw the man he'd always been beneath the mask. "You stupid." "Careful." William stepped forward, his hand protectively on my lower back. "Choose your next words carefully, Marcus." But I didn't need protection. Not anymore. I stepped forward until I was inches from my husband's face. "Say it. Say what you really think of me. Tell me how my people are used to struggling. How you called me your personal slave. How I'm just like those people you screamed at." His eyes widened. "You heard everything," I said softly. "And then I contacted your brother, the one you said was dead, the one who actually has a conscience." I leaned closer, my voice dropping to a whisper. Only he could hear. "You know what the real difference between you and me is, Marcus? You thought my background made me weak. You never considered it made me a survivor, someone who knows how to fight when backed into a corner. Someone who understands that people who have nothing left to lose." I pulled back and smiled. "And now, you're about to learn what that feels like." "The Cayman account, Marcus," Agent Morrison continued. "We've frozen it. All $183,000. We've also arrested Vanessa Rodriguez in Miami. She's already talking, by the way. Gave you up in about 15 minutes. This is insane," Marcus said, but his voice shook. "William, you're really going to let them do this? To your own brother?" "You did this to yourself," William said quietly. "And to every woman you used. I'm done protecting you." They led Marcus out in handcuffs. Our neighbors stood in their doorways watching, the same neighbors who'd smiled at us in the elevator, who'd complimented what a lovely couple we made. Later, after they'd taken him away, I stood on the balcony, shaking with adrenaline. William found me there. "It's over," he said gently. But when I turned to face him, tears streaming down my face, he understood. It wasn't over the trauma, the betrayal, the theft of 3 years. He pulled me into his arms, and this time I let myself break. We sank to the floor of the balcony, and he held me while I cried for the woman I'd been, the time I'd lost, the trust I'd given. His hands stroked my back with a tenderness that asked nothing in return. When I finally looked up, our faces were inches apart. I started. Tell me what you need, he breathed. To feel something real, I whispered. The kiss was desperate, raw, nothing like the calculated intimacy with Marcus. William kissed me like I was precious and powerful simultaneously, his hands cradling my face with reverence. When we pulled apart, both breathing hard, he pressed his forehead to mine. Not here, he said roughly. Not in his space. When you're ready, when you're healed, I want to do this right. His restraint, his respect, made me want him more than any aggressive advance ever could. Have you ever had a moment where everything you'd been holding in finally broke free? When justice felt real but also overwhelming? Share your victory moments below. We need to celebrate the wins. That afternoon, an FBI agent pulled me aside with new information. Mrs. Bennett, we found something else while searching the Cayman accounts. Your husband wasn't the only Bennett involved in fraud. The entire family has been using variations of this marriage scheme for decades, marrying women from disadvantaged backgrounds to access trust fund provisions, then discarding them. Some disappeared, some died. We are reopening 17 cases. She paused. And William Bennett? He's been funding their legal defenses and settlements through a separate account. He's not the hero you think he is. I thought I'd found an ally in Marcus's brother until the FBI showed me proof that William had been paying off Marcus's previous victims to stay silent. The FBI conference room felt like a coffin, windowless, airless, filled with evidence of how the Bennett family had destroyed women like me for generations. Photos of the 17 victims stared at me from the wall. Some smiling in wedding photos, others just missing person reports. Agent Morrison spread documents across the table. Bank transfers from William Bennett to 4 different women over the past decade. 50,000 here, 75,000 there. Settlement agreements with his signature at the bottom. He knew, Agent Morrison said. He knew what Marcus was doing, what the family had been doing. And instead of stopping it, he paid people off to keep quiet. My stomach turned. The kiss on the balcony. The tenderness in his touch. The promises about doing things right. All of it felt contaminated now. When William arrived, I couldn't look at him. The man who'd held me yesterday, who'd kissed me with what felt like genuine emotion, was just another Bennett protecting his fortune. Let me explain, he said, reaching for me. I stepped back like his touch would burn. You paid off Angela! You paid settlements to 4 other women! You knew what Marcus did to Nicole, and you gave her family money to go away quietly. I was trying to protect them, he said desperately. The family would have destroyed them in court. You were protecting your inheritance. I cut him off. You're just a different flavor of the same poison. Something in his eyes dimmed. That's not fair, Keisha. Fair? I laughed bitterly. You think any of this is fair? You made me feel safe. You made me feel... I stopped. That was almost crueler than what Marcus did. It wasn't about the money, William insisted. I was trying to help. By silencing them? By making sure nobody knew the truth about your family? You're just as guilty as Marcus. You just wear a better mask. Angela stood beside me, her hand on my shoulder. He paid me too, she said to William. Convinced me it was for my own good, that fighting the Bennetts would destroy me. I believed you because I was tired and broken, but you were just protecting the family name. William's face looked hollow. I thought I was doing the right thing. The Bennett lawyers, they're ruthless. They would have buried these women in legal fees, destroyed their reputations. The settlements seemed like mercy. Mercy would have been telling the truth, I said. Mercy would have been standing with us instead of paying us to disappear. He nodded slowly, accepting the judgment in my voice. You're right. I convinced myself I was helping, but really I was just avoiding the hard choice. The choice to actually fight my own family. He looked at me one last time. For what it's worth, everything I said to you was true. You are remarkable. You are strong. And you deserve so much better than what any Bennett could ever give you. He walked out. I didn't watch him go. Have you ever been betrayed twice, once by someone you hated, and once by someone you were starting to trust? How did you recover? Tell me in the comments how you learned to trust again. Angela pulled me aside after William left, His shoulders slumped in defeat.
"I need to tell you something about the Bennett money," she said quietly. "The trust fund they've been manipulating?"
It was originally established by their great-great-grandmother, Constance Bennett, in 1889. She was a freed, enslaved woman who married into the White Bennett family and became wealthy through real estate. The disadvantaged spouse provision was her idea, meant to help women like us access generational wealth she'd built. My blood went cold. Are you saying the money they've been stealing using marriages to black and brown women? It was originally black money, set up specifically to help women from backgrounds like ours. The Bennett men have been perverting her legacy for over a century.
Angela's eyes blazed.
And here's the beautiful part. If we can prove that Marcus and William knowingly violated the spirit of Constance's trust provision, we don't just get your money back. We get control of the entire estate, all $47 million of it. She smiled. Ready to burn down a dynasty?
They tried to erase Constance Bennett's legacy, a black woman who built an empire, and I was about to make them remember her name and mine.
The courthouse steps in Charleston felt like standing on a battlefield where my ancestors had been sold. But today, I wasn't merchandise. I was a weapon. Cameras flashed as Angela and I walked up those stairs, our heels clicking like gunshots against stone that had witnessed centuries of injustice. The media had grabbed onto this story like a lifeline. Black woman fights back against old money dynasty. Read the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Trust fund scheme exposed. How one family exploited vulnerable women for generations, declared the Washington Post. My face was everywhere: CNN, MSNBC, local news stations from Memphis to Miami. Charleston society closed ranks around the Bennetts. Country club members gave interviews defending the family's charitable work and suggesting I was an opportunist. One woman actually told a reporter that these women know what they're getting into when they marry up. But for every defender, there were 10 supporters. Women reached out from across the country with their own stories of financial abuse. Survivors of exploitation flooded our legal team with offers to testify. Angela's phone rang constantly with victims' families wanting to join the case. We'd found 17 documented cases of Bennett men using this exact scheme over 80 years. 17 women, 3 confirmed deaths ruled suicide, 5 disappearances never solved, 9 divorces with sealed settlements. Mrs. Patterson, Nicole's mother, became our fiercest warrior. She organized the families, created support groups, gave interviews where she spoke Nicole's name with pride instead of shame. My daughter didn't die for nothing. She told reporters, she died trying to expose evil, and now we're finishing what she started. The legal strategy was clear. Prove that Marcus and the Bennett family had systematically violated the original intent of Constance Bennett's trust. Show that they'd perverted a legacy meant to lift up disadvantaged women and turned it into a hunting ground. Angela filed motions to access 130 years of Bennett family records, bank statements, marriage certificates, death records, trust modifications, everything. William's family turned on him completely. His father issued a public statement disowning him. His cousins called him a traitor on social media. Someone spray-painted "family disgrace" on his car. But William didn't back down. He gave interviews explaining the family history, admitting his own complicity, calling for accountability. I chose comfort over conscience for too long. He told Good Morning America, Keisha Thompson showed me what courage actually looks like. William appeared at my hotel room door the night before the preliminary hearing. I should have closed the door in his face, but something in his eyes stopped me, genuine anguish that transcended his privileged pain. I signed over my portion of the estate, he said, handing me legal documents. All of it. $23 million. It's yours if we win to do whatever you want with. Set up a foundation in Constance's name. Help women like Angela, like Nicole's family, like you. I stared at the papers. Why? Because you were right, he said quietly. I was protecting my inheritance. I told myself I was helping, but I was just buying silence so I could keep living in comfort. I'm done being complicit. He turned to leave, then stopped. And because when you kissed me on that balcony, I felt something real, for the first time in my life. You deserve better than any Bennett has ever given you, including me. But I'm trying to become someone worthy of the woman you are. He walked away before I could respond, leaving me with documents that could change everything. I quit all 3 jobs. Angela said I needed to focus on the case, on healing, on being present for what was coming. The foundation paid me a salary to work as its lead advocate. For the first time in 3 years, I slept more than 4 hours a night. Can people really change? Can someone raised in privilege and complicity genuinely transform? Or is redemption just another performance? I need your perspective in the comments. When do you believe someone's actions versus their words? The preliminary hearing lasted 4 hours. Marcus's family lawyers argued technicalities. Angela argued justice. But the moment that changed everything was when the judge asked if there were any other witnesses. The courtroom doors opened, and a woman I'd only seen in photos walked in. Nicole's mother, dressed in black, carrying a folder. "Your Honor," she said, her voice strong despite obvious pain. "My daughter didn't commit suicide. She was murdered, and I have her diary proving Marcus Bennett threatened her life 2 days before she died." The courtroom erupted. Marcus, sitting in his defendant's chair, went sheet white, and William, in the gallery, closed his eyes like he'd been waiting for this moment for 6 years. Nicole's diary didn't just expose a murder, it revealed a pattern of violence the Bennett family had been covering up since before the Civil War. The judge read Nicole's final diary entry in a voice that cracked with controlled emotion. "If something happens to me, it wasn't an accident." Marcus said the Bennett family has ways of making problems disappear. He said, "I'm a problem now. I'm scared, but I'm leaving this record because women like me, black women, poor women, were always the ones they bury and forget. Don't let them forget me." The courtroom was silent, except for Nicole's mother's quiet sobs. I reached across the aisle and took her hand. 2 women who'd loved and lost to the same evil, holding on. Earlier entries detailed Marcus's transformation once the 3-year mark approached. How he'd grown cold, dismissive, cruel. How he'd started making comments about how easy it would be for someone to fall from their Charleston balcony. How he'd taken out a life insurance policy on her without her knowledge. The FBI brought in a historian who'd been researching the Bennett family for a book. She presented documents showing similar patterns throughout generations. Women married, 3 years later, convenient deaths or disappearances. Insurance payouts. Trust fund releases. In 1923, a black woman named Ruth married Thomas Bennett. She died in a boating accident, exactly 3 years later. No body ever recovered. In 1957, a Puerto Rican woman named Maria married Charles Bennett. She fell down the stairs 2 months before their 3rd anniversary. In 1981, a Vietnamese refugee named Lynn married Robert Bennett. She disappeared entirely. Police reports indicated she'd returned to her home country, but immigration had no record of her leaving. The pattern was clear, methodical, protected by money and whiteness, and Southern loyalty to distinguished families. Marcus's psychological evaluation, ordered by the court, came back with words that made my skin crawl. Narcissistic personality disorder, antisocial tendencies, lack of empathy, sophisticated manipulation skills. The psychologist testified that Marcus viewed people as objects to be used for his benefit. In his mind, the doctor said, his wives weren't human beings with agency. They were investments that stopped being profitable after 3 years. William took the stand on the 3rd day. His testimony lasted 6 hours. He detailed every conversation with Marcus about the family business, every settlement he'd helped arrange, every time he'd chosen silence over justice. "I told myself I was different from them," William said, his voice breaking. "But I wasn't. I was just quieter about my complicity. I watched my brother destroy women's lives, and I paid them off so I could sleep at night. That's not morality, that's cowardice disguised as mercy." The Bennett family lawyers tried to discredit him, calling him bitter and resentful, but William didn't waver. That night, emotionally destroyed, I found myself at William's hotel door. When he opened it, his eyes red from crying. We didn't speak. He pulled me inside, and we collapsed into each other, not with passion, but with desperate need for human connection amid horror. We lay on his bed, fully clothed,
holding each other while the weight of his family's sins and my trauma pressed down on us both. "I'm so sorry," he whispered against my hair.
"I'm sorry for all of it. For him, for them, for every Bennett who came before." I pulled back to look at him.
"You're not them. I'm trying not to be," he said. "But Keisha, I need you to understand. I'm falling in love with you. And I know that's complicated and maybe impossible. But I need you to know that when this is over, when you're free and healed, I want a chance.
Not to fix what Marcus broke, but to build something new with you. How do you move forward when someone from the same family that hurt you wants to love you? Can generational trauma be healed, or does it just repeat? Share your thoughts. I'm struggling with this myself.
The next morning, the judge delivered a preliminary ruling. Based on the evidence presented, including Nicole's diary, historical records, and testimony from multiple witnesses, I'm ordering a freeze on all Bennett family assets pending full investigation. Additionally, I'm recommending murder charges against Marcus Bennett in Nicole's death. Marcus lunged from his seat, screaming threats at me, at William, at the judge.
It took 4 bailiffs to restrain him. As they dragged him out, he locked eyes with me and said with chilling clarity, "You'll pay for this. All of you will pay."
Later, Angela pulled me aside, her face pale.
"Keisha, Marcus made bail an hour ago. A family friend put up $10 million. He's out." My blood went cold. "He knows where I live." "Not anymore, you don't," William said from behind me. "You're staying with me, and I've hired personal security. He's not getting near you."
Moving into the home of my husband's brother while hiding from my husband who was out on bail for murder should have felt like a nightmare. Instead, it felt like the first time I could breathe. William's Charleston house was nothing like the Bennett family mansion across town. A modest historic home in a mixed-income neighborhood, filled with books and lived-in comfort. From the kitchen window, I could see the harbor where ships had once brought enslaved people, including Constance Bennett, to these shores.
History felt heavy but also circular, like I was part of some cosmic balancing.
2 security guards stayed on the property at all times.
Angela checked in daily. The FBI had agents watching Marcus's movements. Still,
every car that passed, every sound at night, made my heart race. Therapy became non-negotiable. Dr. Wright, a black woman who specialized in trauma, met with me 3 times a week. She helped me understand that what Marcus did wasn't just financial abuse, it was racial trauma, weaponized for profit.
"He didn't just steal your money," Dr. Wright explained. "He stole your trust, your identity, your sense of safety in the world. And he did it by exploiting historical wounds that black women carry. That's not just criminal, it's evil." William attended his own therapy sessions. We kept our relationship in careful boundaries. Friends, allies, 2 people processing impossible situations under the same roof. Some nights we'd cook dinner together. Other nights we'd sit on the porch in silence, just existing in each other's presence.
3 weeks into staying there, I found William on the back porch at midnight, staring at nothing. I sat beside him in silence until he spoke. "My father called today. Disowned me officially. Said I betrayed the family."
"Did you?" I asked.
"Absolutely," he said. "And I'd do it again." The certainty in his voice did something to me. I took his hand, and he looked at me with surprise and hope. "Keisha, I'm not ready for everything," I said honestly. "But I'm ready for something. With you. Real."
Slow. On my terms. He cupped my face with both hands. "Anything you want. Everything you want. We move at your pace." The kiss started gentle questioning, careful but grew into something more. I pulled him inside, upstairs, to the guest room that had become mine. This time, it was my choice, my timeline, my desire. I undressed him slowly, claiming each moment, each touch. "Tell me what you want." He breathed against my skin.
"Everything," I whispered back, but slowly, like we have time. And we did hours of exploration, of healing touch, replacing harmful memories, of pleasure given and received equally. He made love to me like I was whole, not broken, like I was choosing him, not settling. When we lay tangled afterward,
He traced patterns on my back. "I love you," he said simply. "Not despite what you've survived, but because of who you became through it." For the first time in years, I believed someone when they said those words. "I think I'm falling for you too," I admitted, "and that terrifies me." "Good," he smiled. "Anything worth having should be at least a little scary." He kissed my forehead. "We'll figure it out together." Marcus violated the restraining order twice in those weeks. Once, driving past the house slowly at 2 a.m. Once, showing up at the foundation offices, demanding to see me. Each time, he was arrested, bail revoked temporarily, then some family connection would get him released again. "The system protects men like him," Angela said bitterly after the second violation. "But we're not backing down." When did you know you were ready to trust again after betrayal? What did healing look like for you? Share your journey. Below your story might help someone else take that first step. At 3 a.m., glass shattered downstairs. William was up instantly, pushing me into the closet. "Stay here. Don't come out." Through the closet slats, I heard voices, Marcus's voice, slurred and vicious. "Where is she? Where is my wife?" Then William's voice, calm and firm. "Marcus, there are 3 security guards downstairs and police on the way. Leave now, or this gets worse for you." A crash, a scream Williams. My hand was on the door handle when I heard Marcus laugh. "You think you can take what's mine? You think she'll ever really want you? She's property, Will, just like all of them. And property that runs away gets returned." Sirens wailed closer. Footsteps running. Then, silence. When I finally opened the closet door, William was on the floor, bleeding from his head, but alive. "He's gone," he managed. Security chased him. But on the wall, written in what looked like blood, were 5 words. "The trial won't save you." The trial wasn't just about money or justice anymore. It was about whether women like me get to survive men like Marcus. The federal courthouse in Charleston was surrounded by protesters, some supporting the Bennett family's persecution, others holding signs with Nicole's face and Constance's name. I walked through them with Angela on one side and William on the other, a survivor flanked by allies who'd become family. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Marcus's defense team was exactly what you'd expect. Expensive suits, condescending tones, strategies designed to make me look like the villain. They called me a gold digger, a manipulator, a woman who'd trapped an innocent man and was now trying to steal his family's fortune. They brought up every job I'd ever worked, framing my work ethic as calculated social climbing rather than survival. They questioned why I'd stayed in the marriage if I was so unhappy. They suggested I'd known about the trust fund all along and had planned this lawsuit from the beginning. "Mrs. Bennett," Marcus's lead attorney said during cross-examination, "isn't it true that you specifically targeted wealthy men, that you worked at high-end events hoping to meet someone like Marcus?" "I worked at high-end events because they paid well," I responded. "I needed to survive, and I didn't target Marcus. He pursued me relentlessly." But yes, when a man tells you he loves you, when he proposes marriage, when he promises partnership, most women believe him. That's called trust, not manipulation. The jury, 6 women, 6 men, racially mixed, watched everything with careful attention. Angela presented our evidence methodically, bank records showing the Cayman account, emails between Marcus and Vanessa planning their escape, text messages where Marcus called me his personal slave, testimony from the other victims' families. William's testimony was devastating. He explained the family history, admitted his own guilt, and provided documentation of every settlement he'd arranged to keep victims quiet. "I told myself I was protecting these women," William said, "but I was protecting my family's reputation and my inheritance. I was complicit in a system that treated black and brown women as disposable. I can't undo that, but I can tell the truth now." Before entering the courthouse, William stopped me in full view of cameras and crowds. "Whatever happens in there, I want everyone to know something." He took my hand. "I love this woman. Not because she needs saving, she saved herself. Not because I'm trying to fix my family's sins, that's my work to do. But because Keisha Thompson is the strongest, most brilliant person I've ever met, and I'm honored she's giving me a chance to prove I'm worth her time. He kissed me in front of everyone, gentle, respectful, public. A claim that wasn't about ownership, but about partnership. The cameras exploded with flashes. On the final day, I took the stand. Angela walked me through my story, the jobs, the exhaustion, the moment I discovered the truth. Then she asked the question we'd planned. Keisha, what do you want people to understand about what Marcus did to you? I looked at the jury. At the courtroom packed with supporters and reporters. At Marcus, sitting there with his fake concerned expression. When the prosecutor asked me to describe what Marcus did, I looked directly at the jury. He didn't just steal my money. He weaponized my race, my trauma, my work ethic. He saw a black woman from poverty and thought, she's been trained by this country to accept suffering. She'll work until she breaks and never question me. He counted on systemic racism to keep me compliant. But here's what men like Marcus don't understand. The same history that taught us to survive also taught us to fight. My ancestors survived enslavement. My grandmother survived Jim Crow. My mother survived systemic poverty. And I survived Marcus Bennett. Women like me, we're not victims. We're warriors. The courtroom erupted in applause before the judge gavelled for order. What would you say to someone who underestimated you? To someone who thought your background made you weak instead of strong? Drop your message below. Let's build a library of survival testimonies. The jury deliberated for 11 hours. When they returned, the forewoman stood with papers trembling in her hands. In the case of Bennett versus Prom, Bennett Estate, we find in favor of the plaintiff, Keisha Thompson. We award full restitution of funds stolen, punitive damages of $12 million, and recommend criminal prosecution for fraud and conspiracy. Then she turned to Marcus. In the case of the state versus Marcus Bennett regarding the death of Nicole Washington, we find the defendant guilty of second-degree murder. Marcus's face went blank. Then he smiled that cold, cruel smile I'd seen that night in our penthouse. He leaned into his lawyer's microphone and said clearly, for the record, it doesn't matter. I'm a white man from old money. I'll appeal this to my last breath. And even if I serve time, I'll be comfortable. But you, Keisha? He looked directly at me. You'll always be the broke girl from Memphis who married up. You'll never escape what you are. Before anyone could stop me, I stood. You're right about one thing, Marcus. I am the girl from Memphis. The girl who survived what you couldn't break. And that girl? She just took everything from you. Sleep well in prison. As they led him away in handcuffs, William wrapped his arms around me, and I finally let myself feel the weight of victory and relief. They say the best revenge is success. I say the best revenge is building something beautiful from the ashes of someone else's cruelty. 6 months after the trial, my life looked nothing like it had 3 years before. Marcus was serving 25 years in federal prison. His appeals had been denied. The Bennett family estate had been restructured, with 40% going to the victims' families and foundation work. The Constance Bennett Foundation for Financial Justice opened its doors in downtown Atlanta on a sunny October morning. The foundation's headquarters stood in downtown Atlanta, gleaming glass and steel with Constance Bennett's portrait in the lobby, a black woman in Victorian dress, her eyes fierce and knowing. Below her image, a plaque read, "She built an empire so women like us could be free. We honor her by freeing others." Every day I walked past, it felt like a prayer and a promise. We provided free legal services to women escaping financial abuse. We offered grants for education and business development. We created support groups and counseling services. We partnered with universities to research patterns of exploitation and develop prevention strategies. Angela ran the legal division. Mrs. Patterson led our outreach and education programs. I served as executive director, using everything I'd learned the hard way to help other women avoid my fate. William worked as our chief financial officer, managing investments and ensuring every dollar went where it should. He donated his entire Bennett inheritance to the foundation, $23 million used to heal the wounds his family had caused. Our relationship grew slowly, carefully, built on honesty and equality. We'd moved in together after 6 months of dating, finding a home that belonged to both of us rather than carrying someone else's memories. The night of the foundation's grand opening, William and I stood in our new home, not the Buckhead penthouse I'd shared with Marcus, but a renovated brownstone in a historically black Atlanta neighborhood. "You know," I said, admiring the exposed brick and tall windows. "A year ago, I was working 3 jobs and sleeping 4 hours a night in a gilded cage. And now?" William asked, pulling me close. "Now I'm free," I said. "Free to choose my work, free to choose my love, free to build something that matters." He kissed me softly. "I'm proud of you. Every day, I'm awed by you." I led him to our bedroom, our space, chosen together, built on honesty. "Make love to me," I said, "not like you're healing me or saving me, but like we're equals building something together." And he did, passionate, tender, real. Afterward, wrapped in sheets that smelled like our home, he traced circles on my shoulder. "I have something to ask you." My heart jumped. "William, not that," he laughed. "Not yet. You said you want slow, and I respect that. But I want to ask if you'd consider letting me invest in expanding the foundation. Not as charity, but as partnership. Your vision, your leadership, my resources, used the way they should have been used all along." I propped myself up on one elbow. "Equal partners? I make all final decisions?" "Always," he said seriously. "This is your legacy, Keisha. I'm just honored to help build it." I kissed him deeply. "Then yes, let's change the world together, slowly, sustainably, on our terms." My Memphis family came to the opening. My cousin Tanisha, aunts and uncles I hadn't seen in years, childhood friends who'd watched me disappear into Marcus's control and were thrilled to see me free. Rita from Grady Memorial attended, hugging me tight and whispering, "I knew you'd figure it out, baby. I knew you were stronger than what was breaking you." What would you build if you had the resources and the freedom? What legacy would you create from your survival? Share your dreams below. You never know who might be reading and ready to help make them real. 3 years after that night when I heard Marcus laugh about me being his slave, I stood on a stage addressing 500 women who'd survived financial abuse and exploitation. "They tried to bury us," I said, my voice strong. "They didn't know we were seeds." Behind me, photos of Nicole, Constance, Angela, and the other 16 victims glowed on screens. We're here because women before us refused to stay silent. We're here because survival is our inheritance. And we're here to make sure no one ever uses our backgrounds, our race, our circumstances as weapons again. The standing ovation shook the building. Later, in the crowd, I found William talking with Angela's new husband, a good man who treated her right. I found Nicole's mother, now on our foundation board, smiling genuinely for the first time since I'd met her. I found my Memphis family, proud and loud and present. I found the women whose lives we'd changed with legal support and resources. This community, justice, love, built on respect. This was the life Marcus tried to steal from me. But you can't steal what's intrinsic. You can't take survival from a survivor. You can only witness her rise. If this story moved you, if Keisha's journey resonated, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about women who refuse to stay down. Comment below with what aspect touched you most. Was it the betrayal, the justice, the love, the legacy? And remember, anyone who underestimates you because of where you came from is about to learn a hard lesson. Your background isn't your weakness, it's your superpower. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next story.